What's up guys, ATCG here, welcome back to Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck of the Day, and today we're updating a deck that we haven't done a deck profile on in quite a while, and I'm updating the Valkyrie deck. We did not do an update for the deck when Dark Neostorm came out, because it only had one new card in the set that I didn't think was worth updating, just one change wasn't that much. But now that we know some new cards from the OCG, and I've taken the time to print them, and make sure that the deck is how it should be once these cards come out. And these cards are not for sale, just printed here for playtest reasons. And I'm going to show you how the deck is going to look like in the future and what you should play in the deck with the new Sigrun that came out. So let's begin. First of all, we have the one-offs. These decks have certain utility against certain matchups, but I don't think you should run more than one of each because they could be a brick. So we have one Brunhilde. Brunhilde is really good against the Sky Striker matchup. She's unaffected by spell effects. She gains 500 attack for each monster your opponent controls. And when your opponent attacks, you can have her lose 1000 defense permanently, and all your Valkyries will not be able to be destroyed by battle this turn. So she's pretty much the biggest beater of the deck, and she's really good against decks that rely a lot on spells and a lot of the spam on the field, and you can have her gain too much attack. One Erste, she's a DD Crow. As a quick effect, when you have another Valkyrie on the field, you can banish a monster from your opponent's graveyard, and she will copy that monster's attack. So she's really good against decks that rely on the graveyard, and she's good against Thunder Dragons because with her you can make Titan miss timing for his effect because you can chain something on the Thunder Dragon that they have on their hand. And also when she's special summoned from the hand by a spell effect, you can recycle Mischief of the Time Goddess, which is the reason you can run away with only playing just one copy and not brick. One Erda, she's a new card from Dark Neostorm. She's a really good card, but when the change was just her, I did not think the deck was worth updating, but now the deck is completely different from what it used to be. So what she does is that while she's on the field and while special summoned by a Valkyrie effect, all your opponent's monsters lose 1000 attack, and any card your opponent has that would get destroyed, instead of going to the graveyard, is banished instead. So once you start running over your opponent's monsters, this card will make sure that your opponent's cards will not go to the grave, and that does not only help in certain matchups because they need the graveyard, but there are also some effects that boost your Valkyries when your opponent has a lot of monsters in the banish zone. Once Fighte, once you summon her, she pops a monster on the field, and when she attacks, at the end of the damage step, you can add a continuous spell from your graveyard to your hand. So she's really good for popping certain cards. You can just summon her and pop anything, and there's one target for her second effect, but you cannot use it again unless you haven't used it already, but it's still a decent effect to get a +1 from the grave. And the last one-off is one Funfte. Funfte is a Foolish Burial Goods. Once you have another Valkyrie on the field, you can send a spell and trap from your deck to the graveyard. There's only one good target, but that's pretty much all you need. In case you don't have your Rite of the Valkyries, you can send that to the grave and search your Mischief of the Time Goddess. And she also boosts all your Valkyries by 200 attack for each of your opponent's banished monsters, so that's the synergy with Erda there. Now for the 3-offs, we've taken a trip to the future. 3 Valkyrie Sigrun, really good card. You can special summon her by sending a face-up continuous spell or trap from your field to the grave. And when she's summoned, you get to special summon a Valkyrie from your graveyard or your hand. So she extends your plays. She's 2200, she's the strongest inherent Valkyrie. And you don't need to play the new goddesses in order to use her effect. I don't think it's that worth running bricks in order to make sure that you can summon her whenever you want. You can just summon her with Ride. So there's only one good card that I think you should play in this deck that has synergy with her first part of the effect. 3 Dritte searches any card in the deck, and she also gains 200 attack for each of your opponent's banished monsters. So again, that's why you need to stockpile your opponent's extra banish zone so that you can have your monsters become bigger so that you cannot decay. 3 Zexta. Once she's special summoned, you can special summon any Valkyrie from your deck. That's pretty much what you go for with Sigrun, so you can have her bring back any Valkyrie, because now you can have them specials from the deck, and once Sigrun specials from the deck, you can special summon one from the grave, so you can spam the board pretty easily, even without Rite of the Valkyries. And you also have another effect with this. You can send the top 2 cards of your opponent's deck to the grave, so that's good if you want to potentially hit a bigger target for Erste so you cannot decay, but be careful when you use this effect, because in certain matchups your opponent might send something to the grave that they need. And the last Valkyrie, 3 Virte. She is a Mystic Tomato. Once she's destroyed, you get to special the Valkyrie from the deck, so the floating effect is really good. And also, once per turn, you can excavate cards from the top of your deck equal to the number of other Valkyries you control. You can add any normal spell or trap you add to the hand, and the rest go to the grave. If you don't have something to add, then they all go back to the deck. So you can add very good cards in the game, not just archetype cards, any specific, any generic normal spell or trap. The only hand drop I run is 3 Herald of Orange Light. I think this is the most powerful hand drop. It's like a Gamma, but you don't have the restriction of not have anything on the field. And also the fact that it sends fairies to the grave is actually better now with Sigrun, because you can just revive them next turn and not lose the card advantage, because that's the point of Herald. If you can utilize the card you send to the grave, that's when this card becomes really good. And can also be used as a call by the grave against hand traps. 3 Destrudo. I run the Yazi engine in the deck because, of course, this is a blind second deck. This is Valkyries, so I think in a deck that has to go second, this engine is very powerful not to run. It's kind of good going first as well, because you can summon a level 7 Synchro in order to have some negations, so it's not like that you can do anything going first. This is really good. And of course the Mara, because you can summon it with Yazi from the deck and start link climbing. And the last monster, 3 Pankratops. For going second deck, I think Pankratops is really good. I do not want to main deck Nibiru or Twin Twisters, because in an undefined format, this card is the best one to have in your main deck, because it can be used against any matchup. So I think it's really good, and it can get itself out of the way, so you can use Mischief, because in order to use Mischief, you have to have only Valkyries on the field. And the one lastly, because the continuous spell I run for Sigrun is Brilliant Fusion, because it can be used as a Foolish Burial too. Since Seraphinite uses light monsters, you send Zexta from your deck to the grave and then just bring it back with Sigrun, and you get another monster from the deck. Now for spells, 3 Ride, special summons all the Valkyries in your hand with different names. You banish from the grave, search your Mystic of the Time Goddess, and during the end phase you shuffle back all monsters on your field to the deck, but if you skip that end phase with Time Goddess, then that restriction doesn't happen. And in order to use Time Goddess, you only need to have Valkyries on the field. So sometimes you OTK with this, sometimes you OTK with Boral Sword, with Mara. So it's not like the old Valkyrie deck when you would just rely on this card to win and you had no other win condition. The deck is more flexible now. 3 Final Light, amazing card. It's a soldier for the deck. You special summon as many Valkyries from your graveyard with different names. You pay 1,000 for each one you summon, and then your opponent gets to special summon monsters from the graveyard with 2,000 attack or less for each one you brought back. The monsters that your opponent brings back, since they have 2,000 attack or less, usually are not that big of a problem to deal with. And if they bring them back for the grave and you have a Erd on the field, then you can just banish them all. So even if you don't OTK on the first turn, you can still make sure the opponent doesn't have any resources. And of course with Mischief you can use a second battle phase, and with it you might be able to OTK with a second battle phase. And 1 Monster Reborn, because as I said, the deck wants to send monsters to the grave, and special summoning Zexta is usually the best play you can do, so I think Monster Reborn is really good. 1 for 1, we have a free discard now with Destrudo. You can send Mara in the hand because it's completely dead if you draw it, and you can special summon Zexta from the deck. It's also an extender, and it also gives you a starter. Foolish, with this you can either send Zexta to bring back with all the revival spells, or with Sigrun. You can send any Valkyrie you're missing if you already have the combo pieces, so you can bring back with Sigrun or Final Light, and of course you can send Destrudo to go into Yazi. The 1 Brilliant Fusion, because it's also another copy of Foolish Burial, but it gives you double summon, and you also can use Seraphinite as a tribute for either Erste or Zweite, in case you don't have anything good going. And if you send this to the grave with Sigrun, then Seraphinite will go to the graveyard, so you will have a field full of Valkyries without anything to interfering with Mystic of the Time Goddess. And 1 Upstart, because the deck needs to be as consistent as possible, so 1 Upstart doesn't hurt you. Now for the extra deck, play Yazi. It's an amazing card going second. Against certain matchups, your opponent can't deal with it because it's untargetable. It's a break sword, it pops itself and another card on the field, and once it's destroyed, you special summon a worm from the deck, so you special summon Mara, and then you use the effect to get free tokens and you start link climbing. That's why you can OTK even without Ride. Sometimes you can just use the standard Boral Sword OTK, and with it you'll be able to win the game. I play 1 Dragster because you need to have something for going first, because if your opponent knows how the deck works and they make you go first, then that's pretty much how you're going to lose the game, because the deck doesn't have that much going for it. But against certain matchups, bring this out might be able to stall them out, at least so that you don't lose the game in the first turn, so you might have a chance of coming back during the next turn. The 1 Seraphinite for Brilliant Fusion. If you recycle Brilliant Fusion with Zweite, you cannot use it again unless you send it to the graveyard there with either Funfte or with the Excavation of Virte. But the second double summon is actually really important because sometimes you can just summon Dritta, search a Virta, and summon her too if you don't have that much good stuff in your hand. And like I said, if Brilliant Fusion goes to the grave, she goes with it, so you don't have to worry about having a monster that is not a Valkyrie on the field for your mischief. I play Nyarla as a thought. How you bring these out is with the Strudo. Once you have Virta and Dritta on the field, you can just use the Strudo on your Virta and make it level 4, and that's how you summon it. It's really important if you know that your opponent has a field like with any gates that you have to force something out, or if you're afraid that you're going to get Nibiru because this deck can get Nibiru. Sometimes it can summon 5 monsters, sometimes it cannot, but the problem with the deck is that it cannot play around it because if you get hit by it, then that's pretty much it, you have no follow-up. But sometimes you need to summon more than 5 monsters in order to OTK, because if you don't, then you won't have enough damage, even with 2 battle phases, unless your opponent has a clear board, but that will not happen that often. For the links, Linkuriboh, usually for Mara, but it's really good with Zexta as well, because Zexta is a level 1, so if you have Zexta, Final Light, or Monster Reborn, you can just summon Zexta, link her away, special summon her back from the grave, get a Dritta, and that will pretty much start your plays going. 1 Link Spider, because the Mara tokens are normal monsters. The 3 Nightmares. Discarding with this deck can actually be really important, because you can discard cards that give you effects from the grave, like Mischief, like Rite of the Valkyries to get your Mischief of the Time Goddess. You can discard a Strudo, and getting extra draws can actually be important because you need to get to center combo pieces. That's why Mara can also be a starter. If you have not that many good cards in your hand, you can just summon Funfte, use the Strudo pop card, then you can just search in cards, or you can send Valkyries to the grave with the Nightmare effects, so you can bring them all back with Final Light. So it's really important to be playing all of these. Even Cerberus, which is not the best in this format, but even if you can use it, then that's pretty much how you want to do it. Ningirsu is actually the best link in the deck, because once you use your Final Light, and if you were forced to summon Linkuriboh with it, because you need to send Zexta to the grave, you can just summon a Nightmare under Linkuriboh and then go into Ningirsu. Ningirsu is a link that gets itself off the field, so you can trade 1 for 1, but then you will not have any non-Valkyrie monsters on the field, so you will be able to use the Rite of the Valkyries even if you were forced to link summon first play. 1 Apollosa. You cannot summon her first turn that easily. It needs a very certain hand order to summon her first turn. She is mainly here for when you are unable to OTK with Mischief, and then you can just use 4 different monsters, because it's very easy to summon 4 different monsters with this deck. So you can summon her and make sure you survive the next turn. Your opponent won't be able to come back, so you can potentially finish them off during the next turn. Avramax is really good. Once Masquerena is released, this card will become even more broken, because it's something that some decks cannot even completely deal with, because it's untargetable. Masquerena makes it indestructible by card effects, so how you're going to deal with a monster that also honors itself when you battle a special summon monster, it's very, very good. You need Edding Gears or something to deal with it. And the 2 Borals, because Borload, as long as Thunder Dragons are around, I think it's a must play in the deck. And Boral Sword, because you're playing Yazi, sometimes it's very easy to OTK with it without even Rite. So that's the deck. I think Konami might be willing to give us a Link monster in Link Minions Pack 3. We don't know that many yet, so there's a good chance that we will get one. And until we know the complete outcome of how the deck will be, we will keep updating you and give you the best Valkyrie deck possible. So thanks for watching, guys. See you next time.